5, let's take a look at the isometric number 9. The approach I would take with this is I would start by trying to create this shape along the front face. So I would want to know all of its dimensions. Diagonally, we're not going to have that, but we can come up with the height here. We can come up with the width here up until it reaches that particular diagonal, the full width along the bottom, as well as this height, and that's going to help us create the diagonal piece. So back in Onshape, go ahead and hit your plus sign to create a new part studio. And it might be helpful to rename these. So right click on the tab and choose rename, and I might rename that number 9. The part we just made, I'd rename number 5. Okay. So based on the way that this object is resting, I'm going to make this front face. So I need to be on the front plane. So click on front, choose new sketch, and I may start with just line segments again. So we don't necessarily need some rectangles, but starting on the origin, I'll go up, I'll go over, I'll make sure I click to go over. Definitely want that to snap down to be directly across from there. Okay. But once again, watch out to make sure that this point is still movable. If it's not, you need to delete some things and redraw. If you had accidentally constrained it to be right along the midpoint, that would cause you some problems later. So let's go ahead and begin dimensioning. The overall width of this object is 9 units. So we'll go ahead and click and drag that out. This is 9. The overall height here is 6 according to our drawing. Now, if I dimension this piece up here, this has a width of 5, and this height on the side has a height of 2. This automatically sets our diagonal so that it is in a fixed location. We can no longer move anything or change anything. It is fixed. So we did not even have to know the angle as long as we know the horizontal and the vertical. That takes care of the shape. So you can do that technique if you're trying to make a specific cut. You can set a line on something and then dimension between a point and an edge as well. So let's go ahead and extrude that shape to match the proper depth. On this image, it's a depth of 4. So that takes care of number 9. Let's go ahead and jump into number 8. So create a new part studio since we have time here. And we'll rename this number 8. Okay, so number 8 definitely has a different look to it. Okay, you might end up cutting some material away. You might end up adding some material from what we can tell. You could start by making this Z shape along the front and extruding it back and then finding some stuff to add. Or you could start with a complete block, a rectangular prism, and delete or cut out certain sizes. So some ways of additive or subtractive modeling are better than others. I really do like the Z-shape idea, so I am going to try to recreate that piece. So right on the front face again, I'll create that sketch. And with my line tool, starting on the origin, I'll come over here. And again, we want to make sure we don't accidentally constrain to that. We also want to make sure we don't constrain to like a midpoint. We don't want to accidentally get into problems like that. So drag that away. Here we do want that lined up. Okay. So the Z shape is a little fat. Okay, let's be honest, it's a little fat. But you can still drag stuff until you begin constraining with dimensions. So on this one, we may not make an overall width because there is no single line that goes all the way across the particular shape. But when we dimension, we can dimension individual widths. So along the bottom of the Z, that's a width of 6. Across this ledge, that width is 3. But we have one more width to set, and it's this across the top, because that's going to set how wide this vertical bar of the Z is supposed to be. So all the way across the top, that is a width of 5 units. Okay, so 3 widths were required to get this set. It's kind of the same thing with the height. There is no single section that goes all the way up the height, so I'm going to set each individual height. So that part is 2. This side, the left side, this is 4. And so it starts to push things kind of out of balance, but anything that's still a different color, like blue, is not fully constrained, so you can move it manually. And we'll continue working on dimensioning this piece. So that height is 4, and that may have pushed it naturally when we added that. And this height is 2. So that one was unnecessary. Okay, that was unnecessary. So re-delete that. So with the way this was set up, that was guaranteed. I'm starting to wonder if I miscounted something, because my Z shape looks a little out of balance. Like, this is supposed to be 2, and it appears to be. That would be a driven dimension. We don't need it. Okay. All right. 2 and 4 is 6. 4 and 2. Okay, yeah. So that one that I tried to add there was unnecessary and made a problem, actually. So, okay. Everything is good to go. Except for maybe this one. What does this say? Okay, that one's forced to be 4 as well. Okay. So it never hurts to try to add a dimension, and then if it turns gray or if it turns red, delete it. You don't need that one, or there is perhaps a different kind of problem. Okay, so the Z shape is fine. That means that we're ready to extrude. And the overall depth on this is 5 units. So looking at it from the isometric perspective, we have a good portion of this shape already. But we need to add on this block that's sitting on the edge. So we can either build it from the bottom up, we can build it from the side across. We wouldn't really want to build it from like the top down, and we wouldn't want to build it from this far right face because it doesn't come out that far. It starts in a little bit. So I'm going to build it off of this face, essentially from the right view. So trying to build it there and extrude it out a specific width on this object. So doing a little extra drawing on my isometric page, I can see that the depth across here is 2 units, and the height, well, is going to be 4 because it's resting directly on that ledge and reaching up to the top to be flush with the top. So I am going to click the Use button, and I'm going to select that top box turned black for me. That way I can make sure that when I select a corner, I'm really on it. And when I hit this bottom edge, I'm really on it. I hit my escape key. Now I'm going to dimension between the left and the right, so I can tell this to have a width of 2. Sketch could not be solved. Well, I'm going to ignore that because, well, oh, I know what I did. Do you know what I did? I ended up getting onto a constraint point. I ended up getting onto the midpoint. So if you hover over that, this icon is the midpoint. So that was bad. So you can either hit undo a couple of times. It took me back to my sketch dimension. I want to undo the rectangle. There we go. Okay. So this time when I click here, make sure you don't snap to that midpoint. I didn't notice I did that. So there we go. Make sure there's nothing special going on. Now, when we dimension between the two, we can tell it to be 2. It adjusts its size, no problems. Green check mark. Now when we extrude, select that piece, and we want that to come out with a depth of 3 units. Or excuse me, this is a width. This is a width. And there you have it. Matches up perfectly with the isometric number 8. Hope this helps, guys. Good luck with the rest of them.